A comedy of naval errors. The Battle of Midway. Part 1. The gambler's grand plan and the nerds who read his mail. An unwanted parade of 108 Japanese aircraft rumbled across the sky. Zeros, Kates, and Vals sliced through the clouds, revealing the American strips on Midway Atoll. Their objective, at least on paper, was very clear. Destroy the lazily parked bombers and fighters, create a few large decorative craters on the runways, and tell the island's defenses to be quiet. But as explosions rocked the small island, the skies above Midway were suspiciously quiet. A troubling question echoed across the cockpits of the Japanese airmen. Where did all the American planes evaporate to? Following the surprise party at Pearl Harbor, the Imperial Japanese Navy seized what strategists call the strategic initiative. With Allied forces reeling, Japan's leaders saw boundless opportunity. Like a Pacific and Indian Ocean buffet, the American and British navies were stretched thinner than a sheet of tissue paper as they struggled to formulate a response. Japanese forces soon began collecting territories as if they were rare trading cards, from the Philippines to Malaya and the Dutch East Indies. At the heart of this offensive was the Kido Butai, the Navy's heavy metal band, a powerful strike force centered around 6 fleet carriers. Any naval force that tried to resist them got an earful. Above the fleet, nimble Japanese planes and skillful pilots outflew and outgunned their opponents, driving the Japanese Navy's momentum like a train with no brakes. Though flushed with success, Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, a man whose gambling blood never ran dry, argued that the Imperial Navy needed to land another decisive blow. Pearl Harbor was a victory, he might have said. No doubt about that. But those U.S. aircraft carriers are still intact, while the submarine base and massive fuel tanks remain unscratched, meaning the American naval forces are still a threat. Yamamoto was well aware that American industrial capabilities far exceeded Japan's. This was a war against the clock. The war needed to end soon, before the American industrial machine woke up and started mass-producing everything. A second crushing naval defeat was needed to force the U.S. to the negotiating table, as they would then have nothing left to fight with. The question remained, how to pull off this magic trick. For Yamamoto, the answer was simple: destroy the U.S. carriers. When Admiral Chester Nimitz was appointed Commander-in-Chief Pacific, he arrived at Pearl Harbor to survey the wreckage, possibly the most expensive scrap heap in the world. Battleships were sunk or crippled, aircraft losses were severe, and morale was somewhere at the bottom of the harbor. After declaring war against Germany and Japan in December 1941, the American public called for revenge, but the Navy had few options. With most of the battle line destroyed, only untested carriers and scattered air groups remained. Nimitz, however, was a pragmatist. The glass is half empty, but we can still drink it type. He immediately ordered the dispersal of available carrier forces to conduct raids on Japanese outposts. He hoped to divide and distract the superior Japanese battle groups while minimizing risk to his own. In the meantime, American industry would make up for the losses, though this would take time. And, for now, the Navy needed a hard blow to keep Japan off balance. With both sides itching for a fight, events over the ensuing months accelerated Japan's motivation for a decisive battle. On April 18, 1942, U.S. Army Air Force's Major James Doolittle launched his B-25 Mitchell Bomber Squadron on a one-way attack, a polite way of saying, good luck finding a place to land. From the deck of the USS Hornet, packed with as many bombs as they could carry, the 16-plane squadron gunned for the Japanese capital of Tokyo. In a daring act of revenge, the bombs dropped their payloads on the unsuspecting city, bringing the war to Japan's doorstep. Bombs landed not only on Tokyo, but on Yokosuka, Nagoya, and Kobe as well. Incensed that the United States had struck the capital, the Imperial Navy finalized its plan to destroy the American carriers for good. Codenamed Operation MI, Yamamoto's plan was a masterpiece of complexity.
Brilliant.
A massive ambush in the waters near Midway Island. Japanese formations would travel separately and then converge in a massive arc, stretching from the northwest to the southwest of Midway. While en route, the Japanese Navy and Army also planned an aerial and naval assault on the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. They assumed U.S. forces would be too distracted by the ongoing invasion in that cold place to notice Operation MI unfolding in the Central Pacific. Northwest of Midway, carrier-based fighters from the Kido Butai would sweep over the atoll and demolish parked aircraft along with any local defenses. Yamamoto bet that Nimitz would respond by dispatching his carriers from Pearl Harbor to the rescue. And here, the Imperial Navy would spring its trap. Japanese naval air forces would strike and sink the carriers, while a powerful surface fleet mopped up the remaining ships and ground troops landed to seize the island. The Battle of the Coral Sea in May 1942 set the stage for Yamamoto's gambit. American forces disrupted the planned Japanese invasion of Port Moresby, inflicting losses on dozens of aircraft, sinking the light carrier, damaging the fleet carrier Shokaku, and depleting the air group of the Zuikaku. These gains came at the cost of the USS Lexington and heavy damage to Yorktown. However, Japanese losses meant that the Kido Butai would be weaker going into its next operation. Believing the U.S. carrier fleet to be in peril, Yamamoto rolled the dice and set Operation MI in motion. Nimitz was not as much of a risk-taker as Yamamoto, but he was willing to take chances when he could hedge his bets.
Eureka!
Nimitz knew a Japanese attack was coming. Signals
Midway.
intelligence
Told you
gathered
it
by a
wasn't
Navy
equal
unit nicknamed
fools.
Hypo, basically the Navy's nerd squad, was steadily unraveling Japan's operational plans. American codebreakers had begun to crack the Imperial Navy's current cipher, known as JN-25. By May 1942, U.S. Navy intelligence officers could decipher most of the current Japanese naval military code. After piecing together various enemy reports and fleet movements, intelligence personnel advised Nimitz that an impending invasion of the Aleutian Islands was likely, and that the Kido Butai was going to attack Midway in an attempt to ambush the American carriers. On the surface, Nimitz's ready carrier force was outnumbered 2-1. This forced him to contemplate desperate measures. He banked on two key factors to even the odds. First was Midway's aircraft acting as a fourth, unsinkable carrier, while the other was the rapid-fire repair of the USS Yorktown, basically using duct tape and hope, which Nimitz wanted back in action. With foreknowledge of the oncoming attack, Nimitz had prepared his own trap. Constant reconnaissance flights and submarine pickets would warn U.S. forces when the Japanese fleet steamed close to Midway. Task Force 16 under Admiral Raymond A. Spruance and Task Force 17 under Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher quietly slipped out of Pearl Harbor and sailed to Point Luck, 300 miles northeast of Midway. There they would wait, patiently, to strike the unsuspecting Kido Butai, if, as Nimitz cautioned, the opportunity was ripe. For their part, Japanese commanders discounted any possibility that the Americans might get the jump on them. Japanese admirals even conducted a war game from May 2nd to May 5th. During the exercise, an officer playing the U.S. fleet sent it to flank the Japanese carrier group before it arrived. The game's referee, a senior admiral, disqualified the move, stating it was too implausible and couldn't happen. Spoiler: This is exactly what was about to happen in real life. To hedge his bets in the real battle, Yamamoto ordered the carrier group commander, Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, to arm half of his planes with torpedoes for ships, and the other half with bombs for land attack. A classic indecisive strategy. Yamamoto himself would sail with the main body of battleships and heavy cruisers some distance away, under radio silence. That meant Nagumo would have to command the carriers alone, without direct support or oversight. Just take it, Yamamoto probably thought. The Armada left Japanese shores on May 27th. Despite their confidence, not everything was going to plan. Problem number 1. The Japanese submarine cordons, meant to monitor U.S. naval activity, were delayed in reaching their patrol zones. As a result, they completely missed the U.S. carriers departing Pearl Harbor. Even when a submarine later reported sighting the U.S. fleet near Point Luck, Yamamoto didn't pass the message to Nagumo. He instead maintained radio silence and assumed Nagumo had received the message. He had not. Thus, Nagumo believed the American carriers were still chilling at Pearl Harbor. Nagumo's assessment was further clouded by a storm front rolling in, as bad weather and heavy fog masked the approach of the Kido Butai. This meant they could not launch long-range patrol and observation aircraft right away. Japanese forces were sailing blind. The need for sharp tactics and intelligence was crucial in compensating for technological limitations. Radar, although present, was rudimentary and had limited coverage. To locate the enemy, patrol craft had to fly sweeping search patterns to visually identify enemy formations, and then return to report their findings, relying on little more than maps, compasses, and a keen eye. Night flying was virtually impossible, meaning carrier-based aircraft could only engage in combat during the day. Both sides were basically playing minesweeper across the vast oceans, hoping to strike first. These operations were perilous. Pilots could get lost, run out of fuel, or suffer mechanical failures and vanish into the open ocean, never to be seen again. Once carrier task forces located enemy fleets, the opposing carriers became the highest value targets. Fighters were tasked with clearing enemy patrol aircraft from the skies, creating an opening for strike groups to move in. Meanwhile, teams of dive bombers would swoop down from thousands of feet above sea level at a 70-degree angle to punch a single bomb through a carrier's wooden decks. Torpedo bombers would fly low and slow, skimming just above the waters to drop their heavy and fragile payloads against a ship's vulnerable flanks. A well-coordinated attack could be deadly. Japanese naval airmen practiced these tactics, and Japanese commanders preferred a well-organized assault over piecemeal attacks. American naval air commanders, by contrast, often deviated from doctrine and improvised under pressure when coordination broke down. Just go was basically the U.S. doctrine. At 9:05 hours on June 3rd, American patrol aircraft spotted elements of the approaching invasion force. Search planes and long-range bombers first located the transport and support groups, prompting immediate strikes. By 15:30 hours, B-17s led the attack, dropping their payloads from high altitude. But Japanese captains skillfully maneuvered their ships, and the bombs fell harmlessly into the sea. A torpedo run by one Catalina on June 4th at 100 hours scored a minor success, lightly damaging a Japanese fleet oiler, but it revealed a deeper problem. The Mark 13 torpedoes used by U.S. forces were notoriously unreliable. It was an ominous sign for the battles to come. Once the Kido Butai was located by reconnaissance aircraft on June 4th at 05:34 hours, it was all the justification needed to launch every available heavy bomber and attack aircraft from Midway. Flights of B-17 and B-26s roared skyward as they climbed to high altitude, while ground-based scout and torpedo bombers raced off on attack runs. The American carriers, however, held back. Midway Island's position was no secret, but the carriers' position was. They would wait for the right opportunity to strike the Japanese fleet in one single blow. To be continued.